All right, on today's episode, we interviewed Brett Swarts, where we really deep dived into what do people need to think about with tax planning, and more specifically, right, how does a deferred sales trust work? What are the powers of it? And again, just the content and things to think about while doing it. It's a very, very powerful tool, and not enough people use it, nor do they understand it. And so, Casey, what was your takeaways?
People that are listening to our podcast, we've been getting a lot of feedback and things. We try to bring a lot of different things around M&A, right? But at the end of the day, many of you are looking to buy that first business. You're not even thinking about what happens when I exit or get down the road or any of these things. But you got to start thinking about it. You got to start understanding that there are vehicles there to help you create wealth. And this podcast really dove into one of my favorite things, really, is talking about taxes and deferred sales trust and all of these different vehicles. And it's been years of reading this stuff, right? And thoughting about it. So anyways, Brett did an outstanding job of just diving into a way to create a vehicle that could be your funding source for the rest of your life, passive income, all of these things using a deferred sales trust. Pretty powerful.
No, it's a very powerful way to save taxes, and you get some other benefits like, the asset protection, which you'd kind of highlighted. And so again, it's not always the sexiest topic, but man, is it a valuable topic. And this is one of those episodes where 30, 45-minute time investment, you will make millions of dollars done correctly. So definitely listen to this one. Welcome to the M&A Launchpad Podcast with your hosts, Casey and Feras with Equity Launchpad. On this podcast, you will gain insights on acquiring, investing in, and selling profitable businesses in the lower to middle market. Whether you're a business owner, investor, or aspiring entrepreneur, at Equity Launchpad, we will provide you with the knowledge, guidance, and capital to navigate the world of mergers and acquisitions.
Hey there, this is Casey with the M&A Launchpad Podcast. Want to let you know about October 25th. Put it on your calendar. This is a do not miss one-day event. There's going to be incredible headliners, but really at the end of the day, you're going to get a chance to talk to people that have made acquisitions, learn from some of the challenges that they've made, because this is definitely a challenging process. But more importantly, there's going to be people there that can help you and support you along the way, from great vendors, quality of earnings, how to run the due diligence process, and how do I get financed? How do I raise capital? How do I structure all of these things? October 25th in Chicago, we're going to be gathering. It's going to be hundreds of people that are all focused, like-minded people. And man, everyone that's come has given us incredible feedback. So mark your calendar, October 25th in Chicago. We look forward to seeing you.
Hey, Brett, welcome to the show.
Feras, Casey, grateful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Likewise. And so for our listeners, you want to maybe share a little bit, Brett, about kind of what you do and what your background is?
Yeah, we exist to unlock capital gains to multiply freedom and impact, which means we build capital gains tax exit plans for the purpose-driven entrepreneur or investor who's tired of the old 1031 exchanges or restrictive ways that really restrict people from being an entrepreneur, which I think is going to be great for your listeners. Quick background, I grew up in the Bay Area of California. My mom and dad at a young age building houses and owning and renting properties. I was absorbing and observing all of this and working on the job site with them, and fell in love with real estate and to be kind of an entrepreneur. And fast forward, my brother and I were the first to graduate from college. He was the first, I was the second on both sides of the family. And we started to work with our minds at a place called Marcus and Millichap, where we help people buy and sell multifamily properties until the 2008 crash hit and things hit the fan. And we saw friends, family, and clients lose half or all their wealth, mainly due to not having, debt flow, tax flow, and cash flow mindset and plan in place. And we learned the hard way that it's not always the best approach to use a 1031 exchange. Fast forward, my wife and I, 5 kids, after lots of financial hardships and challenges during that time, focused like a laser on not only building our family, but also helping entrepreneurs exit in a place where they can build their mission, vision, family values, and compound their wealth. I have a mentor. He says, you're most uniquely positioned to serve the person you once were. And it's kind of like who I was, but also who I am as an entrepreneur, and figuring out ways with wealth, mostly with real estate and building teams to execute in like a fractional family office approach to give more flexibility and freedom to the entrepreneur. So that's a little bit of the background. Played basketball in college. 5 kids, married 16 years, 4 girls and a boy. And live in Florida now. Moved from Taxifornia just about 3 years ago, and grateful to be here in Florida.
Man, great to have you. No, that's exciting stuff. And I had a mentor tell me it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep, right? And so I love the tax conversation. We talk about it when we structure a deal. Or how are we putting it in the most advantageous structure using Section 1202 on a C Corp to be able, to avoid capital gains on the exits. I mean, these are very important conversations because, most of our listeners are thinking about, hey, I've bought my first business or I'm about to buy my first business. This is years down the road, but there's also that planning and thinking and educating yourself to know like, hey, when I do get to that moment, someone does tap me on the shoulder, I get an exit, I'm going to keep most of my money or I'm going to have a strategy for it.
Yeah. And maybe just to add too, right? Tax planning is not the sexiest topic, but it's definitely one of the highest ROI topics, right? And so a lot of times it's about making certain decisions that are kind of, I don't want to say easy, but straightforward to do early on. They're hard to do later. And so it's about getting a strategy, executing it. And so, Brett, maybe, with that said, do you want to just give people some examples, right, of just some of the common mistakes you see people do? And maybe to add to that, I mean, what should someone start doing today?
Yeah, the biggest mistake people make is they're not really clear on their family mission, vision, values. And that's where I was, right? Building my business, building my family, and had a lot of mission, vision, values for my company and the wealth plan, but didn't have the family mission, vision, values for my independent family, right? And so my kids, oldest is 14, youngest is 6. About a year and a half ago, I got to meet with a billionaire, one of the first billionaires I got to meet, got to be on my podcast, which was really cool. His name is David Green, and he has given more away. He's the founder of Hobby Lobby than maybe anyone in the history of the world, right? So he is a very generous person. He's a great steward of his wealth. And so we started our podcast called Build It to Billions, so you can give more or all of it away to help MVPs. And so I was sitting down and meeting with David and also his attorney. I took another workshop. I focused like a laser on mission, vision, values of the family before you do anything really, because if it's not centered on that, I believe we will all be given a certain calling and a work to do in our lives. But if we're not clear on our family mission, vision, values, it's very difficult to live out that calling in a way that where you're a steward of that wealth, the family wealth, the financial wealth, but the relational wealth, the emotional wealth, the spiritual wealth, and having a clear vision for that. And so this is so big. And so when I sit down with entrepreneurs or people about to exit, I always start with that. Like, what matters most to you? What matters to you is important, but what matters to you the most, and most of the time it is the family, it is the legacy, right? It is those things. But the question is, how are we planning in lieu of that? Okay. And that's where we start. And so getting really clear on that. And then now also, of course, defining the problem of the tax. There's about 100 trillion that's going to transfer in the next 15 years, the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet. 50% of all that is tied to high-end commercial real estate, high-end primary homes, and private equity, which is businesses. So then this is the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet. We have an opportunity, everyone who's listening to this, to help ourselves, our families, the people that we serve, build capital gains tax and death tax or estate tax plans so that the freedom and the capital and the flow of the capital can be stewarded within our families or to the causes we believe in most, and things are going to change the world in a positive way, versus being in the hands of the government, right? And so our calling is to help that purpose-driven entrepreneur accomplish that. And I think at the end of the day, you have these different strategies. The question is, do you have a team, right? Hire the who, don't be the how. How can you build a team who can execute? And here's the key: have a strategy that's proven, legal, and flexible. And that's really hard to find, right? And most strategies out there are either proven, but they're not very flexible, right? And it's hard.
Is one of those.
Yeah, 1031. We can talk about that and dive into all the other things here. Yeah.
And I mean, I agree. And, the beautiful thing about the world right now, especially, I mean, again, you just have the tax law pass again, right? Whenever you get 100% bonus depreciation, it really does make 1031 a lot less useful. Right?
Well, I'll tell you just the conversation I had at my house. My son wants my son's due for a new vehicle. He's driving my dad's really old car, and he's been a trooper, right? And he's like, it's time for a new. My wife's like, it's time for a new car. But I'm waiting to 26 because I'll buy it through my company, my truck. Right. And I'll drive it for a period of time and then I'll hand it to him. And we have these conversations, and it's funny, even though it's a small tax conversation, but like the family, my wife and son, they don't get it. They don't get it that I need to drive the truck for a while. It's a hand me off. It's all these things. I'm like, guys, these are the rules. I didn't create them, but we got to take advantage of the plan. And so I'm thinking about that for 26. And then what do you do in 27? Because I have another child that has a car. So it's all these like conversations you have, but you've got to do it before you get there. Otherwise, you're staring at your face. You're at the dealership. You buy the car and you didn't make the plan. And it's the same thing with your business. It's the same thing with your real estate.
And I'll add one thing too. And, one of the phrases that I really like, it's by, I forget his last name, Tom. He's got the book Tax Free Wealth, but his whole pitch is, hey, you are actually being more patriotic by reducing your tax obligation because you're doing the things the government wants you to do, right? Whatever that means. And so you're following the rules, as Brett, you mentioned, right? You're doing those things and you're getting that benefit. And some people think you're being less patriotic because you're paying less taxes, but you're actually doing what what the government wanted you to do. And so it's an important lens to kind of look at it from.
100%. And I think a lot of other mistake people make is they don't build what's called a truly passive income plan as well. Like they get so caught as entrepreneurs. We all do. We fall in this mistake where we're making big money on our company or our business or our real estate, but do we have truly passive income, right? Kind of Tom Wheelwright, Robert Kiyosaki, that whole, getting that fourth.
It was real right. Yep.
That fourth quadrant, right? How do you get to that fourth quadrant? And so that's where your money trades for time. And so part of the other mistake is people don't get really clear on what your truly passive income number is. And so, for example, is it 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 a month? What is it for you and your family, right? Pick a number. And, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, we get diluted results because we have diluted focus. Okay. And we chase 7 different income streams all at once. And instead, if we have a large exit, we can accelerate this opportunity to get truly passive income coming in. And this is the beauty of what we offer at the Deferred Sales Trust. We're going to talk about here in a minute. It gives people the ability to be an entrepreneur or to be passive, to be diversified, or to be, go in on another business opportunity, a real estate opportunity. And so this truly passive income number, we believe, is to your freedom and impact as compounding interest is to your money. Once you're in the Dave Ramsey plan and you get debt free and you got your budget, you got the general things. Now when you're making 1, 10, 15, going to $100 million, this is a whole nother level of how do you build and sustain and be great stewards with the wealth. And so I think this truly passive income plan is income. A mindset and focus is really key, and it's one of the biggest mistakes people make. And because they don't free up their time when they post the exit, and sometimes in the 1031 exchange, the challenge is you have 50 problems, but now you have 100 problems, but you have 100 tenants, right? You keep chasing that, but you're like, okay, if I had something where it just showed up, I call it Kenny Chesney on the beach, guys. You're just training your guitar, you're playing the guitar, and the money's just showing up. 10, 20, 30, $40,000 a month. You don't have to think about it. And now you're like, okay, this is nice. And so the exercise for people is to say, what is your passive income right now? Is 80 or 90% of your wealth inside of your business or real estate, right? And if you were to exit and you could free up 80 to 90% of your time and replace 100% of your income, how would that help you compound your family mission, vision, value? Because we all have great intentions with building that with our families, especially when we have young kids. But the challenge is it can be so caught up in our time of our company, which of course, where you guys come in too, where you're helping people scale and get the right team members in place and the culture and the technology and all of that. That's a part of it. But sometimes it means, especially for like the hard driving guys, it's hard to get out of it. You have to exit and then really have a plan for filling your time, right? Versus getting pulled in back at work, right? My dad, they called him the beaver because he's such a hard worker growing up. And I got that trait, super hard worker. And it's hard sometimes, right? To separate, work and the life balance and all of those things. And so those are just a couple of things I have in mind. I know I wanted to just share that real fast because that's kind of on my heart.
It's beautiful. And I know we're going to get into the Deferred Sales Trust conversation. I was introduced to it. I was actually representing a business for sale, and I was helping a pharmacy here in Houston get an exit. And I'm not a business broker, but I do the financing. I know the deal side. So I took it on to help a friend. We took it down the road. What he did is the guy ended up 100% seller financing, but they took proceeds that the guy brought down to closing, the down payment. They moved that into a deferred sales trust. They then created that vehicle where he was getting the cash flow every month coming into the vehicle. And I mean, it was one of the most beautiful, well thought out things I'd ever seen, to take not a huge exit, but to extend out for the family based on their goals and what they wanted, to be able to give them cash flow all the way through their retirement. And man, I was just blown away with that strategy. So when I heard you were coming on here, I was pumped, because I think so many people need to understand, like, these vehicles are there and they're created there, and they can really generate that passive income, because I've seen it. And I've talked to the guy in the last couple of years. He's so excited. The cash flow is coming in and it's working.
Yeah. And maybe let's get to the brass tacks of it all, right, Brett? So, maybe the two questions just for the listeners, right? What is a deferred sales trust, right? DST, which is different than Delaware Statutory Trust, right? Because people that are listening, there are two different things, and it is kind of confusing sometimes for people. So, Brett, what is that? And then maybe the other side of that too is whenever you talk about passive income, right? What kinds of things are you talking about? Are you talking about people buying annuities? Are you talking about people buying bonds? Are you talking about something else, right?
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yeah, we'll start with what is a deferred sales trust? So a deferred sales trust is a structured installment sale. Installment sales is kind of what Casey just said, right? Where you can do seller financing for a buyer. In this scenario, with that scenario we're referring to, they did a little bit of a both, where he financed the buyer, but he also financed the trust. He sold his position of the down payment to the trust, and then he probably had the installment payments go into the trust, which means it's kind of two installment sales in one, and it extends the flexibility not only of the capital, but also of the payment, because most installment sales last 3 to 5 years. There's no prepayment penalty. Interest rates are maybe 5 to 7%. And it's not necessarily great for the seller. Well, it is maybe for 3 to 5 years, but then they have to pay the tax. With the deferred sales trust, we can have it in 10-year increments, and typically every 10 years, renew for 10, keep it pushing it. And kids can step into your shoes and keep it going. And so it's a very flexible strategy, which I'll kind of combine with where we invest the funds. Typically, it's back into real estate, debt, equity, passive or active deals, other startup companies or other business ventures the entrepreneur has. Yes, we also build in a team to diversify into securities based upon their risk tolerance. I'm a trustee is my role. And so the way I approach this business is my unique skill set as a real estate investment advisor. That's my unique skill set with my background. But then we bring in the financial advisor who's good at securities, right? And then we have the tax attorney on our team, and then we have the CPAs, and they may already have some of those on their team. But a lot of times we're just saying, hey, what's your family office or fractional family office looking like right now? Either A, do we need to get A plus players replacing your maybe, B players, or B, you already have A plus players in certain spots. How do we fill in and bring the strategy, which basically compounds the freedom of the capital and the freedom of your time? And that's really the key to understanding the deferred sales trust. It's one of the most flexible tax deferral strategies that you've never heard of. The deferred sales trust is a manufactured installment sale, which you can invest into any asset of any kind at any time. There's no timing restrictions. It really depends on where and how they like to invest, Feras, on that. Some people more want to do S&P 500, 50%. Some people want to do 50%, private equity, real estate debt.
But before we do,
you're going really fast. Let's maybe give an example.
Yeah, because an installment sale is, so a lot of people don't even know what that is.
Yeah,
right?
so let's use an example really quick. I'm selling my business. I'm selling it to Casey.
Yeah.
Right. And let's say I'm selling it for $20 million. And let's say I started it from scratch. So it's all profit.
Okay.
All right, Casey, go from there.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to bring a down payment to close on that transaction. Okay. And then the way I understand it, Brett, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're not doing a seller note here, right? This is not a seller note. It's an installment sale.
A seller note is an installment sale. So let me walk you through it, right? So Casey's puts $5 million down we'll make it a $10 million to make it keep it simple. Okay. Make it $11 million. Okay. $11 million sale, free and clear. Feras becomes the bank
lender
for Casey, right? The lender. He's lending him $6 million. Casey's bringing a $5 million down payment. Okay. Now, Feras is only going to pay tax on what he receives in the given year. So he'll pay tax on the $5 million in this scenario. And then the other $6 million is in a deferral state. It's an installment. So he's going to get it back in installments as Casey pays in slowly over time. He'll pay tax slowly over time, right? Now let's do another scenario. Casey brings $1 down payment. Now in the traditional deal, Feras would never do that because he's got no skin in the game. Maybe he'd do it for Casey because he knows him, right? But most people he wouldn't do it for. And the reason is because there's not a lot of skin in the game. And, Casey might blow up the business and make the value go way down. And now Feras has got to foreclose and pick up all the pieces. And that's part of the biggest challenge is on a traditional installment sale. The worst nightmare for an entrepreneur, what we have found, is 2 years later, just when they think they're free of everything, right? Just when the burden is lifted off their back, all of a sudden the payments don't stop showing up. And now they're going to have to foreclose and sue Casey and all this stuff and take the business back and pick it all back up. The worst is to do an installment sale, we believe, if you have the deferred sales trust. And here's why. In this scenario, the difference is we say, hey, Casey, we're not going to finance you. In fact, go get a loan from a bank, bring all cash. We don't care. Okay. But we're not going to finance you. We're going to ask you to please come with cash. but we're going to ask you to cooperate with this trust structure where this trust is going to jump in right in between you guys for Feras and you, Casey. And it's going to buy the asset from Feras for $11 million. Okay. And it's going to do it with a zero down payment. Okay. And it's going to immediately turn around and sell it to Casey for $11 million. So check it out. If the trust bought and sold for the same price, 11 million and 11 million, how much gain does it have, guys? Zero, right? Yep. And if Feras hasn't received $1 at closing, he's in 100% deferral state. And we'll talk about why he would do that here in a second. But in Casey's situation, he got the business, he's gone, and he's got everything like he thought he would get, and he's out of the picture. The best part about this is this 11 million can hit Charles Schwab, okay? And based upon how and where Feras wants to invest it, and as a trustee, you have to approve of this as well, we invest the funds. The trust invests the funds. We write an interest rate on the note, typically 8, 9, 10%, kind of that range. And we go make money on the 11 million, and then we pay back Feras slowly over time. Okay. And this is the beauty. Most of our clients will live off a portion of the interest. Okay. They don't need to live off all of the interest. Most of our clients will never dip into the principal. They can kick the principal down, to the next generation and keep it going. And they live off this truly passive income cash flow. Okay.
I haven't heard it that way. That is incredible.
Okay. Now here's the next best piece. Feras is an entrepreneur. Feras, how old are you?
I'm 38?
He's 38. Okay. He's got a lot of juice, left in there, right? A lot of juice in the lemon here or the lime. He's going to want to go start another business, go buy and invest in real estate, do a deal with Casey, do a deal with somebody else, whatever. Guess what the trust becomes? A silent joint venture partner that owes Feras the money. Okay. So watch this, guys. And this is the best piece. And if it wasn't for this piece, I would not even be here. Okay. Because I'm an entrepreneur and you guys are entrepreneurs and we don't like to be boxed in. Right. And if I have to be boxed in with some of these other strategies that put me in a box to only go into securities or only go into life insurance. And I'm like, guys, that's the most boring thing I've ever heard of. You're going to guarantee me 5% or whatever. And I'm going to get a death benefit. Like, okay, there's a piece of that, but that's pretty boring to me. I want to go make 10, 20, 30, 50, 100%. I want to go make, 500% on a business that I create. The beauty of this trust, it now becomes a silent joint venture partner that put up the capital for the down payment for that real estate project, for that new business venture. I'll give you some case studies. We had a client sold a $3 million business, a billboard company business, right? Sold that, deferred all the tax, and he's doing fix and flips houses, right? Another client sold $2 million business, and then he needed funds to build 28 multifamily units in Tennessee. Did that. We have another client who sold $5 million of Bitcoin after they bought it for $50,000 and went to $50 million, and then they used 4 of the $5 million for a startup for a online like a Khan Academy educational for kids. Right. That was the startup capital. All tax deferred, guys. All tax deferred, and they're running the business. Just like if they would have, started a business the next day and had to get $4 million from somebody else, right? And they have to give up all of the ownership equity or maybe control of the business. This trust, tax deferred, funds their business venture, right? And then when you exit, you can roll those proceeds back into the trust for promissory note number 2 and keep rolling this. And so this is what we call a cash flow, tax flow, and debt flow mindset. Most entrepreneurs, and the problem is their advisors, they're just focused on cash flow, right? And they don't know how to connect all 3. And they don't know how to do it in a way that's so efficient and so flexible. So this is part of why most people haven't either heard of this or don't know how to do it, because they don't have this mindset, and they make these mistakes that think they have to be put in these small boxes for things like the CRTs or things like 1031 exchanges, right? And they're more commonly known, but they're much more restrictive than what we have here with the Deferred Sales Trust.
So let me give you a scenario with us. So Ben, I, and Feras, we're 3 partners here at Equity Launchpad. Okay, we make an acquisition and we get to a point where we're ready to sell. Okay, can the partnership create a DST instead of an individual and be able to maximize that from the sale? Is that possible, or is it an individual type of a structure?
So it all depends, but let me give you a couple examples. Okay. First of all, there's never like a commingled DST with multiple families, right? So each of you would have your own trust that only does business with you and your spouse if you're married, right? I'll give you an example. We did a $13 million exit for a car wash business in San Diego. Okay. There was actually 4 partners. One was like a small partner. So he just paid his tax. So he was out. The other 3 had substantial interest, right? Millions of dollars, right? And so on each exit, we set up 3 trusts to do business with each of those families, right? And they each got an installment sale. And this is the beauty. You can customize the risk tolerance, the cash flow needs, the investments to each family. You don't have to all go in it all together, right? And that's the challenge with the 1031 exchange. The whole entity must move, which typically means all of the investors all must go into this next property all together. You're illiquid, not diversified, right? It doesn't even work for a business, right? So that's not great. And so this is the beauty. Yeah, you can, now when I say it all depends, I want to know, do you own it as a C Corp, S Corp, a JV, LLC, taxed as a partnership?
Usually
right?
C Corps. Usually C Corps.
Yeah, we can help on all of them. I would say if you are doing some planning, the one of the tips here for everybody is the most flexible, easy strategy with the deferred sales trust and probably most of any other exit is if you can keep it as a joint venture LLC taxed as a partnership, that would be like totally simple, easy, great, golden. Each one can go their own ways.
And that's usually the holdcos.
Okay.
So the holdco strategies that are holding the assets, right? You use that. So under the C Corp, you've got Section 1202. And those rules have gotten really nice. So,
if you've got that, then that seems really good. Our tax attorneys, no cost, no obligation, and our team will go through and do like an X-ray, an MRI of your whole setup, right? No cost, no obligation, and we'll show and what would work, what you might adjust. But yeah, we've done it with C Corps, S Corps, LLCs, multiple partners. It's just each of them have a little bit different. We have a 1.0 and a 2.0 version. Real quick, by the way, the 2.0 is for estate tax challenges that you have. Right. So if you're selling something over 30 million married with a new tax bill that just got passed, you need to be aware that your state tax limitations is 30 million for a married couple, 15 million single. And so we want to get it outside the taxable estate because the stepped up basis doesn't solve for that. Okay. So we have a 2.0 version that can solve for that. Sometimes we also get caught, Casey and Feras, on just like the cap gains tax. That's the tiger by the tail. The big one is the estate tax. If you ever see the show Yellowstone, that's the entire premise of the show. $1 billion land, and Beth's like, Dad, Kevin Costner, you got to sell the land. And he's like, no, I'm never selling the land. But like, Dad, if they kill you, they're going to take the land anyways because of the death tax. He's like, I'm never selling the land. And that's when I get up there and I yell, Kevin, you got to use the DST 2.0 and you got to call me and we'll solve all of your problems. Now, Kevin would have to have sold the land, guys, to a third-party buyer before he died, but at least we would have eliminated the $1 billion outside of his taxable estate. And here's the best part. No charity, no life insurance, and no gifting required. There's no one and no strategy that I know of that's proven with the close to 30-year track record, thousands of transactions, billions and billions of assets sold using it, and over about 3 dozen audits, all no change audits, that has that. And so this is really the unique thing that we bring to the table. We're not guessing on this. We have that track record, we have the team, we have the process, and we solve especially that debt tax in a way that no one else can touch.
Question. So, putting a different lens on it for people, right? Because the profits are basically held in the DST, does that have to go on your PFS, your balance sheet? Let's say someone did have to file for bankruptcy later, is that accessible or not, right, to a trustee to kind of take over?
Oh, good question. So first of all, you have asset protection automatically built in, right? You are selling it to a third-party trust, at least for the 1.0 that you don't own. And it's outside it's outside of creditor. Yeah. So you have asset protections. It's owed to you, right? And so they could get a judgment, Feras, to answer your question on the cash flow that's coming to you, right? The promissory note can be adjusted. And so you may or may not have cash flow in that given year, right? Or it might be delayed for a couple of years, right? So there's some cool flexibilities within the 1.0 version. The promissory note is an asset that you put inside of your living trust, and it is a part of your net worth, right? The promissory note, but it's over there set to pay you at a certain, a scheduled time. Yeah. And so it's typically a 10-year balloon payment, and every 10 years you can renew for 10 years. We can also make it 8 or 5 or lower if you want. Again, interest rates are like 8 to 10%. So I think that answers your question there, Feras.
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately, the creditors are usually looking for liquid cash. They don't want to wait 10 years to get it. And so again, it's just, I knew the answer and I kind of said that just to get people to start thinking about there's value in having this other entity, Right. So maybe let's go through just you mentioned the Bitcoin example. I think that's actually a good, simple one to explain to people. All right. Let's go explain that one more time just to make sure our listeners understand it. Right. So let's say Casey spent $1,000 buying Bitcoin, and then that same Bitcoin, he can sell it today for $1 million. Right. Scenario one, he sells it for essentially $999,000 of capital gains tax. 30% of that goes to the government. He's pocketing $650,000. Right. Scenario one. Scenario two, using the DST, what he should do, right, because Bitcoin is very liquid, there's a lot of buyers, right? What he really should do is basically sell the Bitcoin to a DST, right? And he gives himself, let's just say again, a 10% 10-year note, right? So he's getting paid out $100,000 a year from the DST. The DST takes that Bitcoin and immediately liquidates it so they can have the actual cash on hand, right? And now DST has the liquidity there. It can go be reinvested into whatever else, right? Maybe Casey's going to sell his Bitcoin and go hop into something else, right? He's going to go buy a piece of real estate or whatever. DST is buying the real estate. It's holding all that and it's paying out the 10%. And Casey's basically getting $100,000 a year of income that he then pays taxes on. And hopefully he's doing other smart things to reduce his tax obligation on that, right? That's in a nutshell how it works, right, Brett?
Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah.
Nice.
All right. So there you go. So it's a good way to just, again, not get a big pop in 1 year. And again, there's 1,000 ways to do tax strategy. And it's to the listeners, it's really important to talk to different people, right? And, they need to people hate the answer of it depends, but it really does depend on your situation. So, I have a lot of real estate. So I have a ton, I have negative income. So then do I care for some of these? Do I not? When should I care? Right? It's very different than it could be what Casey's situation.
You got it. And then the other thing is you can partner with the trust and get additional upside above beyond the 8 to 10% on the note. And so let me just walk you through that, right? So the 5 million of Bitcoin was sold. They would have paid like about 1.65 million of tax. And so we deferred all of that. And then they put 4 million into a startup company. And let's just say that company turns into a $10 million venture, right? Well, we do it like an 80-20 and a preferred return. And that 80% goes to the sweat equity, entrepreneur. Even though they put up no money into that, right? The trust put up the 4 million, but the trust still owes them the money, right? And so it's a wash there on the 4 million that comes back. But on the 6 million upside after the preferred return, what's crazy and what's cool is you get 80% goes to the entrepreneur, 20% to the trust. Or if they purchase an option, they could get 98% of us. So what does all this mean? That's a lot of numbers. What I'm saying is, as an entrepreneur, you can still go hit home runs and get additional, extra bites of the apple. In this scenario, the government's giving you an interest-free loan that you would have paid, but that can be used to go. It's like the ultimate SBA financing. Yeah. Right? You would have paid 1.65 million in tax, but they say, hey, just put it in the Deferred Sales Trust. It'll be 0 interest rate on that as long as you keep this 5 million in the trust and you don't take it. And you can move it in and out of business ventures. You can move it in and out of real estate ventures, stock market, crypto business, all that, all tax deferred until you take payment. And in the meantime, go start a business and go make that thing a huge success. And then you exit that, you can get promissory note number 2. And so this is the tax flow mindset. You create
a different DST. Right.
Same DST, multiple promissory notes. So it's even simpler than that.
But in your example, though, sorry, maybe rewind. In your example, you said that. So let's say I'm that entrepreneur. I'm going to do a JV with my DST where I'm getting 80% of the upside.
Yes.
Right.
So you put no money in. The trust put all
no
money
in. Correct. Yeah. So I start whatever company. I use the $4 million to go buy office equipment and start a company. I sell it, and there's $6 million of profit. I get 80% of that 6. Right. Yes. Whatever that math is, it's $5 million. Now I have a $5 million tax consequence. Do I not?
Oh, you can either pay that or do promissory note number 2, and you stack promissory notes. And same thing if you had a Bitcoin exit, a real estate exit, a business exit, a primary home exit, a jet exit, whatever, all these different assets that you're exiting. We can do it for public stock, private stock, artwork, collectibles, Bitcoin, crypto. We're the first to ever do it with Bitcoin. And I think the first to ever do it with crypto. And so that's the beauty. And then so you think about back to the family mission, vision, values, and simplifying your estate plan, right? This is so beautiful, right? You have 1 trust, maybe 2, depending on your net worth, and every single exit will go into 1 or 2 of these trusts. And then you just get promissory notes to back. And then the kids can step into your shoes on the 1.0 and the 2.0. They actually are the beneficiaries, and it's outside the taxable estate on that one. So that's it. And you don't need all that other stuff. I mean, you'll have your living trust to show kind of how you want, things to happen for your kids or however you want to do that. You can still give to charity, but you don't have to give it to charity.
One of the things you said, and I've got little strategies that I've been working on for years, just reading, but you got to have a team. The truth of the matter is this is highly sophisticated stuff that needs to be filed correctly, documented correctly, managed correctly.
More money, more problems.
If all of a sudden, because a trust has not the deferred sales trust, but a living trust has a 40% tax, right? If you hold cash at the end of the year. So you've got to know how to, there's just all of this. And I take it, Brett, that's where your team comes in, right? That's where you guys go, hey, we orchestrate and we help you guys manage this, all of these burdens, because they're things you got to deal with. And it's a lot.
Yeah. So two things on that. Number one, on the deferred sales trust side, from your guys' perspective, it's so simple. You get a 1099 for the interest you received in the given year. And on the year of sale, you report your sales and installment sale on one page with your CPA. So simple.
Wow.
On our side, you're right. We're doing all of the compliance, the EIN, the tax return for the trust, the P&L for the trust. We have third-party groups doing all of, tax, CPA groups doing all that. But you can shut down your C Corp, shut down your S Corp. Like you shut all that and you get all of that out, right? And just like declutter your entrepreneurial life, right? And you're just like, give me truly passive income and give me flexibility with my capital. And man, I'd love to sell real estate high and buy it low when the market shifts, but it's going to take a couple of years. I'd love to start this new business venture with half of my proceeds from my real estate sale, and the other half I like to go back into real estate. By the way, sometimes we're doing a bi-fractured 1031 exchange. We're doing a partial 1031 exchange and a partial deferred sales trust. Sometimes we're doing a Delaware statutory trust, deferred sales trust, and a regular 1031. We had a client out of Texas who just had a $6 million exit and did a partial deal into South Carolina, partial into a Delaware, partial into the deferred sales trust. So it's not always just, hammer and nail, one size fits all. You're right. You want a team, Casey, right, that can give you capital gains tax solutions, plural with an S, right, to show you how and where that your options might best fit what you're looking to accomplish. And that's really the name of the game. And the deferred sales trust, I just found it just gives so much of what people want to accomplish.
So I want to ask you one last question before we wrap.
Yeah.
Feras, he got his wheels going.
When is a DST not valuable, not the right choice?
Yeah, there's 3 times, right? Number one, if you think your tax team, and you guys are really smart, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of great people, right? Like, they're just like, man, we don't know about it, or they do know about it, but they're like, I don't know if I'd do it. And part of why because they haven't done 1,000 transactions in 30 years. Right. So just like I played basketball in college. I blew out my ACL. I signed my scholarship. I'm all excited. Signed it there. My mom's smiling. My coach is smiling. 2 weeks later, I blow my ACL. Right. I show up to that doctor and he goes, yeah, he's a family doctor, but he's like, yeah, but I did, sports, specialty. He does the little knee test. You guys ever get that knee test when they grab your knee and you're sitting there, you're like, oh my gosh. And like, he's like, oh yeah, your ACL is good. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, great. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. I'm all excited. I want to believe him. My brother's like, hey, go back to him on your next visit. Tell him you want to get your MRI. Don't let him skip the MRI. I've had horror stories of a friend who did it and she blew her knee out. Boom. So I come back to the doctor. I'm like, doctor, I know you're probably going to think this is asking a lot, but I really like to get the MRI. And he's like, you're wasting your time. He's writing up the script. You're going to drive down there to all this, He's just like totally like convinced I don't have a blown ACL. 2 weeks later, the results come back. Guess what? Hey, Brett, sorry to say, you got a blown ACL, right? So this is a classic example of somebody who is not a specialist in ACL surgeries, who is giving his very strong opinion based upon his experience with this thing. And that's the challenge we find is, number one, your team most likely is going to say no because there's zero upside for them to say yes to something they haven't done, right? Guess what? They also have an alternative. Hey, Casey, just do that bonus depreciation. We got 100% there. Okay. By the way, you might do it for a portion of that. Hey, just do the 1031 exchange. Just try it and true. They're just really busy with what they're doing and they want to just kind of like push that to the side. If they say yes to something they've never done or not really familiar with, they have next to zero upside. If it goes great, they're really not the hero. But if it goes bad, guess what? They're the person. And so sometimes you need to replace that team member, and you're not replacing it with just somebody who's trying this. Thousands and thousands and thousands of transactions, billions and billions and billions of assets, over 36 no-change audits. I believe my business partner is the smartest person I've ever met. He's a genius. He's a tax attorney, CPA, former M&A attorney for Fortune 100 companies, okay? Here's the reality. You get in a room with him and me, and you spend 30 minutes or an hour with your tax people, 9 out of 10 will join us. Okay, so that's number one. So let's get over that. Let's imagine it's legal, okay? By the way, we provide lifetime audit defense, or the law firm does. And so if you get audit, no additional charge. Number two is trustee, okay? You got to trust the trustee. So who's that? That's our company. We're a third-party unrelated trustee. Now, here's that kind of sounds kind of scary sometimes, but guess what? If you've done a 1031 exchange, guess what? You sent your funds to a third-party unrelated company. For a period of time, they controlled the funds and they had to follow rules. Guess what? We're kind of like a long-term 1031 company just for you. Okay. Kind of like, right? And yeah, you have 24/7 access to view the funds online. Nothing moves at your approval or their signature. You are a creditor, you're a lender. We work together as a team. We can work with your financial advisors if you want to do that. We have ours. Man, it's a whole ecosystem here to keep the transparency and accountability. So that's number two. Number three is fees. Okay, we charge about 1.5% to 2% on the AUM under management. Now, typically we can return 8, 9, 10% compounding net of fees. Okay. But that being said, you've got to understand how to make the DST an investment and not an expense. You're not just deferring capital gains tax. You're also deferring income tax to the extent you don't take it in the given year. Kind of like an IRA, really powerful stuff. You're also able to eliminate estate tax if we have a big enough deal in the 2.0. You're also able to establish, guess what, a new depreciation schedule. If you go buy a piece of property when you partner with the trust, wow, isn't that cool? You can sell like 100 million of Bitcoin that has no depreciation and go buy, let's say $300 million worth of real estate that has depreciation. Wow, isn't that cool? Yeah, that's really cool, right? Versus having to wait for a stepped up basis. And then the last one is if you can diversify and increase your cash on cash return, you can unlock, hopefully, your family mission, vision, values in a whole nother way. And we always say, don't trade what's profitable for what's priceless, right? And if you have a chance to exit at a high multiple and a chance to defer your tax, steward your wealth, compound your freedom and the capital, man, why wouldn't you hire the team, right? What's the worst thing that can happen? Guess what? They charge you 10% on penalty and you pay the tax. Guess what? We're going to go make that 10%. Right? They typically audit happens in year 2. What's the audit window? It's typically 3 years, except for California, it's 4. So you start to actually look at these things and you go, what are you really risking here? You're risking if you just pay the tax and lay down, like the government's going to go waste it away in about 10 seconds with their 37 trillion of debt, right? On our side, we say, why don't you steward the capital? Let us help you do it. And let's pass on a legacy that's going to, you're never going to regret.
I love it, man.
Awesome.
This is the good stuff right here, because again, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. And that's really good, man. Real quick, just before we jump to our rocket round, you wrote a book, right? So
yeah, we did.
So talk to us real quick about the book, because
it's called Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. We have Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank in the book, which is pretty cool. We have Tony Robbins, CPA, in the book. And it's all about unlocking your ideal wealth plan for when selling assets of any kind for yourself or your clients. And really unlocking, more of that family mission, vision, values, and stewardship of the capital. It's my story from really zero to knowing about all this. I am a real estate broker by trade, a real estate, kind of developer, by growing up with my parents. I am a common entrepreneur real estate guy. I did not study to be a tax attorney or CPA, and I try to make it really simple what these really smart guys do. I'm kind of that bridge between all of this. Yep. I just happen to have the 10,000 hours in this whole world of 1031s, Delaware Statutory Trust, Deferred Sales Trust. So yeah, check out the book. You can go to Amazon or go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to get the book.
Is there an audio version by any chance yet?
So we're working on that right now. So not yet.
He's waiting for the chat GPTs to get a little bit better on the audio quality.
Right, exactly. Because I'm a big reader, but I spend so much time in the car driving from project to project. I listen to a lot of my stuff.
We got a YouTube channel it's pretty epic. If you go to Capital Gains Tax Solutions YouTube channel,
cool.
We've got all the client testimonials, the how-to videos.
I'm jumping all over it, man. I love this stuff. So it's pretty incredible.
Awesome. Cool. We'll go ahead and move on to our rocket round, where we ask our guests the same 3 questions. So first question, what do you like to do in your free time?
So 2 main things. When I'm not working, I'm with my family, my daughters, my son. When I'm not hanging with them, we do the 2-for-1. So we do jujitsu. All the kids do jujitsu, so do I. So when they're practicing, I'm practicing in another room. So that's a big piece of the fun stuff with the family. And then basketball. Basketball grew up. It's my passion. One of my passions. My top passion in life for sports or activities. So I was just playing this morning. I was just shooting, doing a shooting workout, and then I'll play any kind of pickup game that I can. So those are my two main kind of fun things to do.
Yeah, I used to play basketball in college. I mean, not at the professional level, just, pickup games. But Kevin Durant went to my college, and I got to play with him once. And I always thought I was good at defense. And you play a guy like that, and even though he's tall, scrawny, and lengthy, and he is still leagues better. So he's got the 10,000 hours that I never had. So.
Absolutely. Next question. What's your most memorable moment in your business journey?
I think it was likely, it was a couple moments, but I would say the one that really sticks out to me was the 2008 crash, right? Where friends, family, client were losing half or all of their wealth. And a lot of people were saying, get out of the real estate business, go get a real job at the bank or kind of thing, get the salary and the safety. And my wife and I are, married at this point now, and the baby's on the way. And we had a decision to make, right? And do you kind of give up on the entrepreneur dream here? Or do you figure out a way, we call it the honey badger mentality, to just do whatever it takes? And that's what we did. We said, okay, we're going to move with my brother to a small condo. We're going to sacrifice. I'm going to get a job at Cheesecake Factory and sell avocado egg rolls and cheesecake. And by day, I worked at Marcus & Millichap and still cold call and help my clients with the banks and hold them to their properties. And so it was a 2-year journey. I walk into Cheesecake Factory, and the guy says, you're way overqualified. You have 2 degrees and a minor. You played basketball in college on scholarship. You're at Marcus & Millichap. You're just going to quit when you close a deal in a couple of months. And I said, tell you what, sir, I have a baby on the way. I commit no matter what. I'll be here for 2 years. I'm going to work by day there, and I'll come here nights and weekends. And so I did that for 67 hours a week for 2 straight years. And 2 years and 1 day, I was able to retire from the Cheesecake Factory.
Nice.
And it was a beautiful moment because I kept the entrepreneur dream alive, and I was able to keep my commitment to the Cheesecake Factory. And I was able to learn and be humbled a lot, right? I mean, at that point, I was embarrassed and didn't tell anyone about it because I was embarrassed of that. But now looking back, it's my proudest moment because it really defined like what was meaningful for my wife and I, and it really defined what was my passion and calling in life. Because when you're not making money, selling real estate or selling tax deferral services, and you just keep loving it and growing and doing it, then, maybe it's really meant for you. And so I kept pushing, and fast forward, we're very successful now, but that was probably the most memorable one when I walked into the Cheesecake Factory, retired forever from it, and the rest is history, I guess you could say.
Great story, man. I love it.
Well, most important question then, because, Cheesecake Factory has a big menu. What's the best item on the menu?
Avocado egg rolls, dude. Right. And that sauce, man.
Avocado egg rolls are good. I just wish they made it without the red onions.
Oh, yeah. Hold the red onions. You can do that. Yeah.
Right. That's awesome. All right.
Last question. Favorite tool or resource?
I can chat GPT and AI at this point. It's hard to pass up. I can literally click the button and say, hey, help me to download, this client meeting in my mind, all of the details, how me to write an email, how me to write the notes, and just download it there and then edit it a little bit. It saves me 90% of my communication time on follow-up. It's just absolutely amazing. If you're not using that feature, start using the feature immediately.
I jumped on it a couple weeks ago. It's been starting to use it for other than just rewriting an email or a post. It's literally talking to it, help me think through this. And wow, it's shocking.
Yeah, I get a lot less calls from Casey now. I'm usually the person he bounces those ideas off.
Now it's chat. He knows me now.
Then he comes to me and he's a lot more sharper. He's already figured out the thing. And so now I'm trying to catch up. Awesome, Brett. Well, how can the listeners get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can go to brettswarts.com if you want to follow all my social media stuff and kind of the family journey and all that kind of thing. And that also gets access to the book and our company. We have 2 podcasts. One's called Build It to Billions. And then we have the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast and YouTube channels. And then last, if you have a live deal, it needs to be at least $1 million net proceeds, $1 million gain, needs to be big enough. You can go apply for a no-cost consultation by going to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. That's capitalgainstaxsolutions.com.
All right.
Outstanding, man. Brett, thank you very much for being here today. That was excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the M&A Launchpad Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's podcast and would like to support us, please leave us a rating and a review after you listen. If you're looking for guidance on your next business acquisition or sale, capital to support your next business transaction, or to invest in a private equity opportunity, visit equitylaunchpad.com to learn more and to connect with our team. If you know of an individual who would be a great guest for the show, head over to equitylaunchpad.com/nominate, where you'll have the chance to refer yourself or someone else to be a guest on our show. I'm Casey Minshew, and I look forward to talking with you next week.